So I was going to end the stream. I was going to do it. But then I realized sometimes in life, you got to stay up a little bit later past your bedtime. And sometimes in life, you got to stay up past your bedtime because the OG of OGs decides to join at the very end.
Yeah.
Mr.
What up, guys?
Code Scrap.
What up, Code?
What's up,
How you
man?
doing,
How
bro?
are you?
Writing code. I was
Hey, man.
pushed my last commit up to Foundry, and I was like listening to you guys while I was coding. I was like, dude, I'm gonna call in and see what's going on.
All right, so we're not going to take too much of your time. We'll try to limit it to 15 minutes. But dude,
Cool.
you know, people haven't heard from you in the past couple months. Palantir went all the way up to 85. How are you doing?
Doing amazing, man. I've been working my ass off. We're just doing a ton of work around Foundry right now, doing a lot of new and interesting projects, and then I've been head down on this like agentic framework for Foundry. It's like I'm building this whole like text to action framework that lets you automate processes using like natural language. It's really heavily based around a lot of the work Anthropic did in agents, but I'm bringing it to Foundry and like building a Foundry native solution for that. And it does some crazy shit, man, because it's like we take full advantage of the ontology to like ground the models and do all the training data curation, and then we can do these like crazy long running transactions where like, you know, like an operator's got to go back to a payer and figure out like, what do I do with this doctor's name or whatever that I can't figure out, and they can like call back into these agent workflows like a week later and like rehydrate them and pick them back up where they left off using the ontology, right? Like we heavily leverage the ontology for a lot of this stuff. And so it'll be like this first class agentic framework that can do just about anything. And I'm going to open source it, so you guys can all like check it out.
Wow.
And if you want to build on top of it, it'll be available. And then we've got 4 like what we're calling kind of like ontology foundations or Foundry foundation suites that we're going to release that have like these. They're pretty cool. They're like pursuit tracker. It's like if you want like a Salesforce Lite built on top of Foundry, that's like got AIP at the core to do like your pursuit tracking. It's pretty sick, and like that'll be open source. Working on it, basically hooked it up to G Suite and to Slack and to Google Meet transcripts. And so what it does is like automatically writes all your follow-up as a follow-up it's supposed to send. It automatically, like we wrote this agent that goes through and like automatically follows up, it does meeting requests, it does all this cool shit. So like you don't have to like remember to like, oh, I got to go create that task, or I got to go like do that follow-up. It's just automatically done straight from the source data that's generating all that stuff, which is crazy.
Code,
So like, we're gonna have a lot of cool shit.
I need to ask you. We just talked about the DevCon 2, and we mentioned that you had this pipe dream years ago. Like Palantir, please start embracing developers. I want to ask you, like, where are we on that roadmap that you envisioned years ago? How far have we gotten? What steps do we have left before we actually start to have a proper, real developer community? Like, what does Palantir need to do, and how far along are we on that once pipe dream you had years ago?
Totally. Yeah. Great question. We're at the starting line, right? So like DevCon 1, you kind of look at that as like that was the start of the race. Those things typically take 2 to 3 years to really get solid traction. So we got a little ways to go. The team around it's awesome. Like I know a lot of the guys and gals that are working to make those events successful, make the community successful. So we got some great people at Palantir that are pushing that. And that goes all the way to the top, like all the way to the C-suite is behind, you know, getting that developer community built. But we're about 2 to 3 years out, I would say, from, you know, reaching a decent size. There's still some like product changes, I think, also that have to happen in order for developers to be more open to like adopting the platform. There's little things around the margins that they complain about. Developers are really like picky, you know. They're like, if it's not, oh man, if this doesn't do this, I'm not going to use it. If this doesn't do, you know, so like there's all this little bit of catering you have to do to the community that they've got to do. But I'd say like 2 to 3 years out from being like, you know, substantial, like definitely saturating a large part of the enterprise base. But you never know. I mean, with the way people are, like, let's just say you get a killer app built on it that's like a consumer app and it's super successful, Like that could be like a catalyst that just blows that out of the water. Next thing you know, like everyone's flocking to the platform. Or like some of this happens in enterprise too. Like today I gave a demo and the partners that were on the demo were like, how did you build this in 2 weeks? Like 2-week build. And we were replacing a product they had like already built, you know? And so they knew how long that took. And so when they saw us like come in and we had this thing functional in 2 weeks, they were just like, you know, so like those kind of things are catalysts too. I think that's going to happen all over. So maybe we compress that timeline depending on some of these things, but generally speaking, like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, Carp always says take the timeline and cut it in half. That's like his
or like cut it in like a
his
third
philosophy.
of what it used to be. We're doing a lot better than cutting it in half for sure.
Code, do you think 2025, we keep hearing it's the year of agents. Do you think Palantir is going to focus a lot on that concept?
Oh yeah. They're investing a ton in like AIP logic and some of these parts of the platform so that you can more easily build agents. They're building some of the coolest production agentic systems too, like that insurance underwriting use case. I forget how many agents they use. I think it was like 75. I don't know, some
75,
ridiculous
yep.
amount of them.
Yep.
And then they took that insurance underwriting process down to hours. Right? Like so, I definitely think they're investing heavily in that, as is everyone, right? So like pretty much all across. Companies, it is all being put into the engineering around how can you make agents faster and like easier and kind of more Lego block building like. Foundry, you know, it's got AIP logic, which is kind of the place most people build those. There's some limitations though. It's like with AIP logic, you kind of have to know the flow of how your agent needs to work ahead of time. Because like you can think of it as like you're putting these states and you're outlining them like these little cards that you put on the screen. But like, what if you can't know that ahead of time? What if it's like dependent on the inputs to the system? So like the flow could be completely different depending on what the initial conditions are. I think that's a spot in Foundry that doesn't exist. And that's the gap I'm looking to fill with this text to action framework that's coming that I'm going to open source. And it's like it's the thing you use when you can't use AIP logic because you can't know the flow ahead of time. You have to like engineer the flow in response to the inputs that are coming in. But I think they'll come up with something a little bit more first class for some of this stuff in the future. But I think that as an agentic platform, like there's a reason there's a million of these agent builder things, because that's like the easy part, right? It's actually really easy to figure out how to do something like LangChain at the end of the day. It's actually really, we've had state machines forever, right? Like I've used state machines in countless applications, and they make really good building blocks for agentic workflows. So like that's the fun part. The not fun, shitty part is like, oh man, how do I secure my data? How do I make this whole inference chain auditable? How do I ground the model in an information system? You know, like these are the parts that suck, and that's why the Palantir was able to create AIP so fast. Is like the layers on top that everyone's like all the sizzle up here. That's the fun, easy stuff. It's all the stuff that they spent 20 years building that's extremely hard that everyone's now finding out they need. You know, like, oh, how do I build a semantic cache? How do I do all this? How do I build a router for the like? Foundry's got all of this kind of nailed from the beginning, and so it's like AI came along and just made all that like 100 times more valuable. So it's, I think as an agentic platform, that's the stuff you got to have. And people who are doing this in production at scale, that's what they find out really fast. And then all the people building like the snake oil, hey, check out my thing over here. You know, like they haven't quite figured that out yet, I think, at the end of the day. So.
All right, last question for you, Code. You said a year ago we need the NVIDIA quarter. I don't think we got it yet.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think we get it this year?
God, I hope so. You know, I said like, God, I think you can go back and watch these interviews from like 2022, where I was like, 2025 is the inflection point. That's when this whole thing goes parabolic, because like it was enough time to let all the so like your Palantir this whole time has been fighting against like central IT and their initiatives to go build a Foundry like kind of system, right? I was like, there needs to be enough time for those things to fully fail, and we're watching those kind of fail right now, and they are collapsing. And like a huge part of it is like enterprises are really sick of continuing to funnel money into like, oh, we need a data lake. Oh, now we need a lake house. Does all this stuff actually start like bearing fruit, you know? And so those things are all collapsing. And then this next trend, which is kind of going to be like, all right, how do we retool the org to align business and tech together? And kind of like the phrase I like to use is like business led, tech enabled. It's about like breaking down central IT, redistributing those assets out into mission driven teams that are like little pods that are basically tasked with like achieving a specific mission. Like, see Bob over there with that spreadsheet? I want Bob to not work on that spreadsheet anymore, but I want to use technology to solve Bob's problem, right? So like, you got to make these mission-driven pods that are going to go out throughout the org and use these technology assets, whether those are people or tools like Foundry, to rebuild everything we do in these companies. Because if you look at it and you look at the competition we have with China, the US is not going to compete the way China competes. Our only option is technology and automation. And like, if I can't make General Mills make cereal better through technology, we ain't going to make cereal better. And so this other pressure is the competition we're going to feel and have been feeling from international and some of our adversaries. And I think all of that is coming together right now. And you're seeing that happen in real time with like Anduril going to Ohio. You're seeing it, and that, like, you think Raytheon's super stoked that Anduril just showed up and is now making weapon systems that may replace some of their orders. But guess what? Raytheon wasn't doing the last 20 years, like figuring out how to use technology the way Tesla does to build shit cheap and fast and efficiently, right? What happens when the Tesla of General Mills shows up, like the cereal maker? You know, someone's going to show up somewhere from Silicon Valley who's figured this stuff.
Gotta figure out an
We're
internet.
all waiting on. We're all waiting
Yeah,
on.
we gotta.
We're all waiting on the edge of our seat.
And apply the Netflix model, the Tesla model, tech. Did I cut out my back?
You're back.
Yeah,
now.
you're good. You're
Am I
good.
there?
You're good. You're good.
All right, cool.
Can you
But I was
repeat
just saying, like,
point?
yeah, like when the maker of cereal that's like Tesla for cereal shows up, General Mills is fucked, you know? And like the thing is, these companies have got to learn how to use technology efficiently. And I love the pressure that's being put on like Raytheon and these traditional defense makers, because that is going to go to the private sector. But when we do it company by company, right? We go across the whole economy and do this, we're going to beat inflation on the supply side. Shit's going to get cheaper, right? Life's going to get better. And we're not going to do it through slave labor. We're going to do it through technology, you know. And that, I think that's the other reason I chose 2025, is that, you know, that's when all these pressures are kind of coming in. And so, yeah, I think we're going to see it this year. I hope we see it this year. I'm doing my part, guys. So I'm out here definitely trying to.
I mean, I heard Elon on a podcast exactly talk about this exact concept, that the U.S. got lazy in a lot of areas, from manufacturing to steel to all logistics, all kinds of different things. And you know, it took him doing Tesla and then him doing SpaceX, totally redoing what people thought couldn't be done and optimizing. Even now, Tesla's optimizing their manufacturing a third time in how they build their cars. And Palantir really can be that optimization operating system for any creator. And those who don't want to innovate they'll get replaced pretty quick.
And just think about the leadership around like Palantir, Anduril, Tesla, like the energy and no one thinks like these people, right? Yeah. And it's why they're winning. You know, it's why their partners are winning. And I think that like a lot of what Palantir has been fighting this whole time are the people that don't think like them. Mm-hmm. You know, the people who want to consolidate, you know, technology decisions into central IT, and they talk about a strategy roadmap for ERP replacements in 10 years. That ain't going to get you there. You know, the business as usual, let's figure out how we rip out, you know, this version of this shitty system and replace it with this other one that costs 10 times more and it's just as shitty. Like that isn't going to work anymore. And so I think there's a large part of the lessons that these companies have to learn is just how do they retool their organizational structures and models so that they can effectively leverage tech, provide the right incentives, like the right thinkers, the heretics. You've got to have heretical thinkers in there, man. You can't just have, you know, 10 carbon copies of Bob that all say yes, sir. You've got to have some people that are heretics and willing to like go against the grain and do some unorthodox things. So I think a good part of what these companies are doing too is causing a cultural shift as much as they are like a technical shift, which is, man, dude, it's sorely needed. So I'm super excited for it though. I'm here for it. I'm really excited to see tech startups that make things, like manufacturing. Like
Palantir might be investing in Shield AI. So you got
That's
some drone ones now. Yeah.
crazy. Yeah. But like, let's do it in the non-defense too. Like what can we make? What can we reshore if we take an AI first approach? In these vertically integrated supply chains, and like, I love the Tesla models. Like, but let's just build it all. The whole thing, start to finish, right? Like, how do we do it? And man, if you could bring that back to America and like actually make consumer products that way again, and you're making them at a fraction of the cost, and you're not using slave labor and not having to use all these shitty things that you do out there, like that's Cold War 2.0, guys. That's how we shamed the Soviet Union into failure. We can shame our other adversaries into failure if we can do that. And I think we can. But that's the mission over the next 3 to 5 years. That's really what it's all about.
Yeah. All right, Code, we appreciate you. Last 15 minutes. Hopefully you're enjoying your drink. We got to enjoy some of your wisdom for the past 15 minutes.
This is my end of day whiskey. Relax a little bit. Wish I could have had one with you, Dom.
I know, man. I know. I actually haven't had any this year. I'm trying to see how long I can go before I go back.
Oh man, come on, dude. No. At a certain point, life is not worth living. I'm not giving up coffee. I'm not giving up whiskey.
Yeah, I can't give up. I can't give up coffee. No, I can't give up my Nespresso.
Thank you, Coach Trap, for gracing us with all those insights, man. Really appreciate it.
We love. I mean, we could hear you talk for a lot longer, so we appreciate it.
And Code, I mean, I know you're working on a lot of stuff, so I think everyone should stay tuned because you've got some big stuff.
Stay tuned. There's going to be some interesting things. I think you guys all ought to keep an eye on the feed. I'm working with some amazing people, and these open source projects we're releasing are kind of just the beginning. I really do believe we're going to rebuild SaaS on Foundry, and there's a lot of people working toward that goal. And seeing what it's like when you we threw out the whole playbook when we started building these things. We were like, we're not building anything the way it looks today. We took AI first approach. Like, how do we just not do anything? How do we let the AI do most of everything? We only kind of fill in around the gaps. And dude, it's like you're 100 people now. It's like there's 100 of you working. And so it'll be really cool to see what the community does when they get a hold of these things and starts playing with them, understanding some of the lessons that you can kind of learn once you look at what does finance look like if my general ledger is managed as an ontology, and then all my finance operations are pushed out through Mercury Bank APIs, and everything's backed up on S3 with 11 nines of durability. I've got more durability than your ERP, promise you. And everything I do is automated, and it's ready for audit tomorrow. I don't have to spend 2 years getting ready for audit. We encoded the audit principles into the ontology, right? That shit is crazy. And it's going to be open source, man. We're going to give it to the community, see what they can do with it.
All right. Well, next time we meet, Code, I got to make sure I get this glass of whiskey for you. So there you go.
Yes.
Thank you, Rob. Appreciate that.
Careful. I drink top shelf, buddy.
I know. I spent some time with you before. I know. All right. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Thank you, Coach Rap. Means the world. We'll see you guys next week on Palantir Weekly.
Thanks,
everyone.
guys.
Bye.
See you guys.
Bye.